Hey guys, welcome into a little bit of poker talk today. It's another area at dfsarmy.com where we can teach people to become better players at whatever hobby they're interested in. I'll go through that in a minute, but I did want to at least show you first that Korean baseball had a pretty good night last night. It was the first night, opening night. We had projections, cheat sheets, content all unlocked and free for you at dfsarmy.com, everything but the optimizer anyway. And we had some success. It's just typical of what we do at DFS Army. We have the gurus and the coaches in place already for every sport that pops up, every sport that we play automatically gives you an advantage across the rest of the industry. Everything, all tools, all coaches, all content for one price, dfsarmy.com. If you notice, DJ Pro had a pretty solid day thanks to the notes, and boom, $2,500 into the account, turned $375 into $3,500. A nice little 10x return for DJ, and just goes to show you that's what we do here. If you want an advantage and you want to learn how to beat the game that you're playing, then obviously consider giving us a shot. We did a lot of talking about poker this morning, and we started talking about hand ranges. Hand ranges are something that if you're new to poker or you're trying to reset and get back to the fundamentals, which I've done, a dozen times in my own poker career, you need to have a good handle on a baseline. I mean, you hear me talking a little bit about horse racing. We need a baseline system. DFS, we need a baseline system of research that we do. You know, I look at this, then I look at this, then I look at this, and whatever it is, you form a routine, a solid foundation from which you can build on. And then you add in and incorporate things as you grow and as you get better. Poker's no different. You start with a starting hand chart or starting hand range, memorize it, learn it, ingrain it, and then you start to loosen it up. You start to, maybe I'll re-raise this hand, or maybe I'll open these hands in late position, in addition to what I'm being told to do. And if I go to redchippoker.com, it's actually a great starting hand chart for people that want to learn various disciplines of poker. And I would tell you what we started talking about today was suited aces, but I'm also going to talk a little bit about starting hands in general. This is something to memorize, but if you're wanting to work on your own game, you're going to need a software program like a Poker Stove or something. Poker Stove is free. You download the software, and you can come in here and click on Player One Preflop tab. And let's say you want to early in position, in under the gun, early position hands, you want to raise, I don't know, 10% of your hands. Then you would slide this bar over to about 10%. See how the numbers changing over here? Top 10.3% of hands looks like this. Sevens are better, ace jack offsuit, king queen offsuit, ace nine suited or better, king 10 and queen 10 suited or better. This is the top 10% of hands. Now you can argue with me that you should be opening pocket pairs, suited aces, suited connectors, whatever. That's a different debate for a different day. But this is what a 10% range sort of looks like. If you get to later position hands and you want to open, say, 35% of your range, to maybe steal the blinds or whatever, then now you're looking at this range. All suited aces, all suited kings except for king deuce, all suited queens except for, queen 2, 3, 4, and then your suited jacks, suited tens, suited nines, your suited connectors down to 8, 7, pocket pairs down to pocket fives, a couple of the offsuit broadways, of course, offsuit connectors 10, 9, jack 10, and offsuit aces down to ace 4. Now, I would argue this range needs to be adjusted and tweaked. You would be opening all pocket pairs, probably most suited connectors, most suited one gappers. You'd probably take out queen 5, queen 6, queen 7 type hands, but this is a good idea to learn how to play. Now let's say I get raised from the cutoff and I want to defend my blind, and I want to take about the top 5% of hands and re-raise with it. Well, that's what they would look like. You can memorize these things yourself, or you can start doing things like I would re-raise these hands where I come down and probably re-raise the guy like, well, I might call a blind steal with, pocket sixes or something like that, but I would probably re-raise, say, pocket nines or better. Every suited ace I would re-raise. Of course, I would use the aces. I guess that's off, and you turn it back on. Any suited ace, most big aces, King, queen, maybe for value. That's getting a little bit, maybe some of these suited connectors down in here, maybe a couple of baby pairs. And look at this. I'm actually reversing it, but that would have been about 13% of the hands. And if you read about poker, you're going to find that the top 13%, if you're re-raising 13% of your hands, you're probably a little too wide. So you can practice by cutting this stuff down. I can get this back to 0. Anyway, you understand where I'm going. You play with these sliders, you play with these ranges, and what you're going to start doing is you're going to start learning what another player might be doing as well. Let's say you have some kind of a heads-up display or some kind of poker tracking software, and you find out that this guy who raised the pot ahead of you from middle position, you're in late position, you've got a hand like pocket eights or something that you would like to play, and you want to know, should I re-raise it or should I just call with it? Well, you're going to want to know what his range, what is he opening? Is he opening 6-4 suited, or is he pretty tight? He's only opening ace-jack suited or better. You need to know this, and with a heads-up display or software, you can start to accumulate hand histories on these guys and start to figure it out. If you see back in the day when we used to play a lot of online poker, you in the United States, you could see a guy was playing 40% of his hands, and he was raising 25% of them. Well, if he's raising 25% of them and he raised your pot, you slide this over to 25% and you see that this is his raising range. Now you can click apply and you can go here. Here's the range inserted into this hand. Now, what hands would I, of course, aces, I would re-raise, right? Because over versus his range, aces have an 85% advantage. Now, what about if I included kings, queens, ace, king? If these are the only hands you're re-raising, you're not re-raising enough because this range has a 70% advantage over this guy's range, right? However, what if I wanted to, include some, some bluffs? Like I wanted ace, queen suited, maybe some of the suited connectors like, 10, 9, 8, 9, 8, 7. I wanted to include the pocket pairs. I'm going to re-raise any pocket pair. Now I'm out to 8% of my hands. I want to include a couple of the, straight making low suited aces. And, I don't know, for kicks, maybe like a suited gapper or something like that. Your range is going to look different than that, but that's about 9% of hands. How does this range combat his range? Well, I've still got the advantage. I'm still ahead. When he raises and I re-raise, I'm doing it for value because I'm ahead of his overall range. Okay, these are the types of things you need to play with to work on your game. If you want to, again, know what these starting hand ranges are, so I clear out of here. Actually, I'll just clear it all. You need to get into a hand some kind of a software program like this where you can slide this number and see what is a 10% range, what's a 12% range, what's a 20% range, what's a 30% range, and you can start visualizing this. So when you start seeing a guy, this guy's raising quite a bit, he probably has a pretty wide open range from here. It's probably about the top 30% of hands, or he's a maniac, it's the top 50% of hands. Now you can see which hands in your own range are going to combat this range as well, and you can come back over here and you can play with hand 2. If you want to take a multi-way pot, the first guy is just a maniac. The second guy is pretty light. He's going to call in there with about 25% of the hands. And here you are sitting there with Jack 10 suited. What should you do? Well, you have a 37%, 36% equity advantage. That you've got that much equity in the pot. It's a little bit more than the third of the time that you should be winning it, but you notice that guy 2 is actually ahead of you. You can get into that pot. You might not re-raise it unless you're going to do it maybe as a bluffer. All these are things that we can talk about, but this is you have to start here. You have to start somewhere to be able to understand what you're even asking or what you're even talking about. And then there's so many other ways that we can go, but this is just the very, very basics. So when we talk about the suited aces and why in a hand like this from say early position, why are we opening the suited aces? Because they balance out our range. It's not always ace king, ace queen. It includes some of these other straight makers, and it also shows when we get to a showdown, we flop 2 pair or whatever, and we get to a showdown in a hand where we have to show our cards, our villain sees that and goes, oh, it's not always ace king. Oh, it gives the guy something to think about. But when we get to the cutoff, we open these things up. But notice that if we're playing against a looser, more aggressive raiser, we're 3-betting or re-raising a lot of these hands as well. That helps you in some tournament situations when the tournaments get late and the blinds get bigger and you're sitting in that small blind or big blind and you want to defend, and this guy in the cutoff or the button spot is opening pretty judiciously. He's or pretty aggressively. He's in there a lot. He's doing it too often probably to always have great cards. You know you've got some weakness in there. How do you target that? Well, you push back. You pick the appropriate hands. You don't just push back with 9-5 suited because, oh shit, it's about time to bluff the guy. No, you push back with hands that when they do get called have a fighting chance. And you would pick these suited aces, even these lower ones, because I have an ace, which means there's only 3 left in the deck, which makes it a little, 25% or so less likely that he has an ace, especially when one flops. Now I know where 2 of those aces are, one in my hand, one on the board. Now there's only 2 more left in the entire deck. It makes it less likely that he has one as well. Therefore, my top pair is probably good. I can continue forward in that hand. I may play it cautiously because after all, he may have a bigger ace, but I'm going to at least have some more confidence in these hands. But when I'm pushing back and I'm re-raising the guy, I'm saying you don't have an ace. You're probably not going to call this 3-bet. So I'm going to make it fairly big. And if you bet to, say, 3x the blinds, I'm going to bet to 8x, 9x, something like that, maybe even 10x, and I'm going to really push back on you hard so that you're forced to fold a hand because I really don't want to play this hand too much post flop. It is good enough to be aggressive with, but I don't really want to continue in a situation where I have to decide, is your kicker better than mine or what? Instead, I'm just trying to send a message to you to lay off my freaking blinds, big boy, and eventually it's going to chill these guys out. You're going to get into some hands with them with cards that stand a fighting chance. But more importantly, you have a card that he should have, and he has a less likely chance of having that card. Therefore, you can be a little bit more aggressive even with some of those weaker holdings. I hope this stuff makes a little bit of sense. It's not probably the most organized way to tell you this, but this is the type of stuff that I like to do with members inside DFS Army. You ask questions, I'm going to give you a video explanation of it. We've got guys that are doing cash poker sessions right now, and I'll just roll through it and then give you my comments in a video. I will also show you some things along the way to why I say what I say or why my opinion leans this way in your hand, because I am just trying to share with you the work that I've done. I'm not a poker pro. I'm not the best guy out there, but I'm pretty fundamentally sound, and I'm not a fish at a poker table. And by talking back and forth with a couple of other members in there, we can make your poker game better if you're more of a beginning player than we are. If you're an expert player, Daniel Negreanu isn't going to ask me any advice on his poker hands. But if you're looking for advice or you're looking for a discussion or you've got a question, kind of a hand that you could have raised, you could have called, you could have bet, you didn't really know what to do, let's discuss it. That's how we get better. And we do that with every DFS sport. We do that with every hobby that we take on, from horse racing to anything. And right now with Korean baseball tipping off for this first week in DFSArmy.com, a lot of our content is free. Next week it's going to lock up. So you're going to want to use the coupon code DFSArmy. And you're going to want to use the link in the description of this video to get into the VIP program so that you have access to every single thing that we do. Come for your favorite sport, but stick around for all the other stuff that you learn. All right, this is Chapadong. I'm out of here, DFSArmy.com, and we'll see you on the inside.